Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast that celebrates films we reckon might be underrated or underseen. I'm Alice Oliver, I'm your host for this week, and I'm joined as ever by Josh Hallam, and it was his turn to pick the film, and he went with Confidence from 2003. So, let's see what we reckon. So Josh, before we get into this week's film, why don't you tell our listeners all about our Patreon?
Yes, so if you head over to patreon.com/justfilms and that, if you're thinking that you fancy a little bit of extra content from us, access to episodes a day early, other bonus stuff as well, then head on over to patreon.com/justfilms and that. It's linked in the episode description, so you'll be able to find it. All tiers include episode access a day early and bonus extended episodes as well. So aren't you lucky? Head on over to patreon.com/justfilms and that.
Fabulous. Thanks, Josh. Sounds so interesting. I'll have to check it out myself.
It's almost interesting. It is. It's almost interesting, Alice. Listen, it keeps the lights on. We do this for free. We've done nearly 200 episodes, guys. You know what I mean?
Wowzers.
If you want to do a little bit of supporting, get on over there. If not, well, thanks for listening.
There we go. Yes, thanks for listening, as always, indeed. Right, so back to this week's film then, Josh. So as I said, it's Confidence from 2003. So spoiler warning, listeners, if you haven't seen this one yet. So Josh, do tell us, what is the film about? But more importantly, why did you pick it?
So Confidence is a film from 2003. It's sort of, it's a sexy con man film. That's what it is. Like, I'm not going to go, there's some guys and they wear suits and they're cleverer than other people and they're conning people out of money and they're grifting people and stuff like that. That's what it's about. It sort of like came out around the same time as Ocean's 11 and stuff like that. But I love Ocean's 11, but I can't pick it because it's not underrated and it's not underseen. And maybe I'll pick it as one I just want to talk about one day.
Maybe on your birthday or something.
Yeah. As a present to myself, I'll pick to talk. But anyway, so Confidence is a film about a group of con men who are trying to pull off a big con in order to pay off a debt and also seek the revenge of the death of one of their friends. Stars Edward Burns, Rachel Weisz, Paul Giamatti, Dustin Hoffman, amongst others. Why did I pick it? So I picked it because I think it's underseen. It didn't set the world on fire box office wise, and it might be a little bit underrated as well, which we'll come to when we come to the scores. So that's why I picked it. Underseen and a little bit underrated, but we shall see. So, had you seen this one before?
I hadn't seen it, and I don't really think I'd heard of it. I don't think this was on my radar at all. And I had quite a lukewarm reaction to this. And I thought, I thought I was going to like it. Because, really like it. Because I do, I quite like this sort of thing. I thought it was going to be a little bit trashy, a little bit cheesy, but sexy and stuff. A bit like Focus, when we did Focus when Barbara came on.
So that's when I added it to my list.
Oh,
so
interesting.
when Barbara picked Focus, hello Barbara, hope you're still listening. When Barbara picked Focus, I was like, well, I like sexy con man films. Who doesn't like a sexy con man film? And like I said, I like Ocean's 11, but I couldn't pick that. So this is a film that I think I came onto this film because do you remember back in the day when you watched DVDs, did you ever have unskippable adverts to get to the menu?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think there was an advert for this just on a DVD I had. And I thought, that looks good. I watched it. So that's how I came across it. But when Barbara did Focus, it just sort of little reminder went off in my head. I was like, I'll add Confidence to the list. And then I looked at what we picked recently. I thought, well, maybe it's time for a bit of sexy comment film. But anyway, so you were lukewarm on Confidence.
I was lukewarm on Confidence. But you know what? The weird thing was, there are individual aspects of the film that are really good. It was interesting. Like when I was like, oh, this thing's really good. But I'm not really feeling loads about this or whatever. So it was quite mixed. But I mean, my list of things that I did like is long, and there is going to be plenty to talk about here. But we'll start with you. First of all, I want to know a bit more about your relationship with this film. Well, you touched on it there. Like you see it as a trailer on the DVD, and you thought, oh, that's a bit of me. That. So is this one that you've seen quite a lot, or was this the first viewing since you were an adult?
It's definitely one I've seen as an adult. I hadn't watched it for a good few years because I'd forgotten bits about it. Like, for example, it's not aged very well, which we will come on to, but there are some bits where I was like, ooh, forgot about that. But I think, I saw a trailer for it somewhere, whether that be on a DVD, on the telly, in the cinema, whatever it was. And I think it's definitely riding the coattails of Ocean's 11, isn't it? You know, it's definitely something. It's like we've talked before. Remember when The Matrix came out and loads of films after it came out were like, it's like The Matrix, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of them. But look, there are things to like about it. So I've got some things in my likes as well. Looking at it with a critical eye, did enjoy it again. Enjoyed it again on a rewatch. It's not pretending to be anything that it's not. I don't think it's pretending to be an upmarket, intelligent indie film or anything like that. It's it's sleek. It's quite cool. It's quite sexy. It's got quite a jazzy, cool soundtrack.
Oh, the soundtrack, yeah.
I think it's just good, fluffy entertainment, really. It's nothing too taxing. I think it's definitely one you could stick, it's not a kid's film, but you could definitely stick it on a couple on a Saturday night on your own whenever you were watching it. I think they use all the elements of the genre really well. It's definitely quite self-aware. It knows that there's an element of it being tongue-in-cheek. There's elements of it knows, whereas Ocean's 11's quite down the line and serious in places, this definitely knows what it is. So quite like that. So it uses a lot of the sort of tropes of the genre quite well. I think there's a decent balance in this. A lot of genre films have a lot of exposition dumping in. There is a lot of that in this, but I think that it's balanced for the most part fairly well. It's a bit pandering in places, but I think that it does fit the world, and it does a good job of showing the characters just sort of basking in their own coolness, just wearing cool suits and doing cool things and stuff like that. So it did, so as I said, I picked it. I got it here. I picked it. I added it to my list, should I say, because Barbara picked Focus, and it made me think of this back in the day. Do I think this is better than Focus? I think it is, but I think you don't think it is.
You would be accurate in that assessment. I think that the thing with Focus is, obviously you've got Will Smith.
It's a lot more upmarket.
I thought Focus was a little bit more sexy, and I thought there was a bit more respect around Margot Robbie's character, and that she was treated and handled a bit better than perhaps Rachel Weisz's character was.
Only a little bit, only in the fact that no one directly gropes her breasts, which happens in this film. That is definitely true. This film hasn't aged well, and I'll be honest, I had completely forgotten that.
Well, of course, because you're not.
It's been a while since I watched it. It must be 10 years.
And we've got, we're looking at things now with more clarity and understanding, and just figuring out, what does work, what doesn't work, what's okay, and what kind of makes your toes curl a little bit.
Directly groping a woman is not.
But there were moments in this where it was all the douchebag characters doing all the douchebag things, whereas Edward Burns, who plays Jake, he's not the biggest douchebag, and he is the hero. So I do think that there is something to be said there when it's characters do these things and you think, oh, that's a bit gross, or I hate that, but they're not a likable guy, and they're not meant to be likable. So you can kind of forgive the film in parts, I think.
I think that's a really good point. And also it is a bit, if you're inevitably going to compare this to the Ocean's 11 films, Focus, older ones like The Sting and stuff like that. It's definitely a bit grimier than those films.
100%.
It's definitely, everyone in this film is a little bit more of a grub, with the exception of like Rachel Weisz's character. It's obviously made up to be that sort of femme fatale type character, but everyone in it's a lot more like everyone smokes and drinks, and it's a lot more like it's got a lot more of a grimier, darker, grimmer, more adult aesthetic rather than, it's still cool, it's still sleek, but it's almost like they tried to go, well, let's do something like an Ocean's 11, but let's make it more realistic. In Ocean's 11, it's 11 guys robbing 3 casinos at the same time, whereas this, it's, they're trying to do something that's more akin to what I imagine a real con is, which is conning someone out of a load of money, but not so much money that's like, you could go off forever and live comfortably. It's like a big lot of money, but, that's your job for the next couple of weeks or whatever. So I thought Edward Burns was quite good in it. He's got quite sort of macho. He's got that, he's not as cool as your Clooney's or your Smiths, but he's a bit more. He reminded me a little bit of like a James Caan in Freebie and the Bean.
Okay,
like a little bit more sort of like he is always in control. Like he seems like he's always in control, quite like that. Dustin Hoffman properly steals the scenes that he's in as well. I thought he was, as he has, as he tends to do when he pops up in films like this. So I thought he did that. I thought he was quite funny in places as well. There's some superstition stuff that they touch upon, like things like, something which we'll come back to, but that redheads are bad luck. Sorry about that.
I haven't heard that one before, but there we are.
Well, do you think you're bad luck? Or?
Hell yeah. I literally destroy anything that comes anywhere near me, so I totally get it. But it's funny with that, because I thought Gordo, so Paul Giamatti's character, he was really funny, I thought. And I think he had some really strong comedic moments. And I think I found it a lot funnier than I perhaps was expecting to.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he is. I thought that as well. I'd never noticed the bathroom thing before. I must have seen this a couple of times before, and I'd never noticed that whole thing that he is obsessed with. He can't really use public bathrooms or VR. They've got to be clean and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, there's definitely some idiosyncrasies with his characters, and there's definitely some funny moments in there. It's almost like, because again, it comes back to that thing as, it's a sexy con film, but there are elements that are just a little bit more realistic. So one of them, again, spoilers, but at the beginning, one of them, the whole reason why they're trying to get revenge is one of them is killed for something that he's done. But it's not like in a sort of like a big epic way. He's just shot whilst he's watching telly. And he's just got like sitting in his pants, and he's got a big thing of Chinese food. He's just eating it, and he just gets shot in the head. Whereas other films, like if you think of like your Scorsese films where it shows stuff like this, it's like big epic deaths. Like think of like the end of Casino or Goodfellas or whatever it is. Big epic cool deaths. Whereas this is just like, well, how would someone like that actually more likely get killed? Well, probably just at home like that. So overall, I think there's lots to like. I think it knows what it is and it executes it fairly well. There are some flaws which we'll come on to, but go on. You say you've got some stuff that you like, so let's hear it. Obviously lukewarm, but let's hear the warm, not the Luke.
So I really like some of the cinematic techniques used. So this includes things like the lighting, the shot selection, and the framing. So we get a couple of scenes where our core cast are sat at what kind of looks like an outdoor cafe or something, where they seem to be sitting on the pavement or the sidewalk for our friends over at the pond. For our friends over at the pond, I'll call it a sidewalk.
Hello to all of you over there, over at the pond.
Over the pond, there we are. But the camera is placed like a fair distance away, so you've got traffic cutting across the frame from one angle. And then when you get the reverse shot, there's pedestrians walking through the frame on the other side in front of the actors. And I just quite like this method, like it sort of disrupts what's occurring in the frame. And I thought that was a really interesting choice. It makes it feel like really busy and almost like, like you say,
claustrophobic, isn't it?
It is, but it also adds to that grittiness, like you were saying, like they're not in some swanky hotel room having this meeting, like they're literally just sat on the pavement at a cafe with all these people around and all this traffic. And I quite like that. There's a lot of handheld camera work in this as well, which I wasn't expecting. And that makes it feel a little bit more gritty as well than your usual con man film. And you don't usually associate that as much with things that are like more super slick and smooth and steady. You touched on the music there. I did really like the music. It reminded me of the soundtrack for the game Need for Speed that was on the GameCube in like 2002 or something. I got absolutely obsessed with this game.
For young listeners at home, the GameCube was a console that old people played.
Yeah, I can't. Whose is the GameCube? Is it
Nintendo,
Sega?
Isn't it?
Oh, is it Nintendo?
Oh no, because I'm sure it had all like Super Smash Brothers and stuff on it. Was it not like what they brought out after the N64?
Mate, I don't even know. It was purple and it was a cube. It was a cube. Name was that.
It was a GameCube. You played games on it. Not to be confused with the Dreamcast. That casted Dreams.
Sega Dreamcast.
Entirely different. In fact, because the Sega Dreamcast, wasn't it? Oh, I was so old. Sorry.
But I thought the soundtrack really reminded me of that and had that real sort of early noughties feel. It felt really genre appropriate and was always used at the right time, not dominating the scene and just always complementing what was happening on screen. So I really appreciated that. And there is a skill to that because we've seen films before where it's just too much and it does my head in and I can't bear it.
It's like elevator music, isn't it? It's just on in the background all the time and you don't notice it. But if it wasn't there, you'd be like, this is weird.
Yeah, but I did notice it. So it's like elevator music that I did
in
notice.
a good way, though. You noticed it
but in a good way.
Yeah, right.
Didn't do my head in like Bruce Almighty. That was terrible. Terrible. Calm it down.
Same year of release?
Was it? Yeah, there we go. Hey, there we are. Yeah, it all comes back around.
Synergy.
I actually really like the moments with our protagonist, Jake. So he's played by Edward Burns. So he speaks directly to the camera at times. And I feel like this is such a risk to do in these sort of films because 50% of the time it's going to work And then the other 50% of the time, it's just going to be cringe and weird. But it works here, and I think really works well with the genre and the subject matter, because a con man character is usually someone who wants you to look at them. They're trying to charm you. They're trying to be convincing. So it works in this instance. And it reminded me at times a little bit of Will Smith in Hitch. So, Will Smith coming up a lot in this podcast. Sorry, Edward Burns. We're all about Smith here. I think it's got a great pace. It always feels like it's moving, like both in terms of the story and just physically as well, because the shot selection is quite dynamic and has a great variety. The film is quite successful at moving along when it needs to and not letting the viewer get too bored with any particular scene or plot point. So it just always felt like something was going on. Like you just weren't just sat there kind of waiting for the next thing to happen. It was a continuous momentum, and I thought that was really good. And you've touched on it already, but performance-wise, Dustin Hoffman is the standout here. I think he's excellent. He brings a lot to the character. There's a lot of effort from him and a lot of energy, and he's obviously got an idea of what he thinks this character is, and he's brought that, and he's committed to it. Loved it when Andy Garcia turned up later. I really like him. I think he's a fantastic actor and he makes me laugh so much. And Gordo as well, like I said, played by Paul Giamatti, just had some really, really funny moments in there that I thought was really enjoyable. And that was it for me. But there's quite a lot there, Joss. I don't want you to be disappointed that my reaction was a bit gentle. But no, there's good elements in there. There really is. We'll move on then now to talking about anything that we didn't like about the film, or perhaps anything that we would change. So go on, Josh. I reckon you're going to be quite balanced here. I think you're not naive to these things. What are some things that you don't like about this film?
I think, there are a few things. Like I said, it is flawed. Look, let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about the obvious big one. It's not aged very well. The treatment of Rachel Weisz's character is pretty appalling. Mm-hmm. Like you said before, yes, a lot of it is from characters who are either villainous, or not the sort of guys that you all want.
Just douchebags, right?
Yeah, they're not painting them out. Dustin Hoffman's character is pretty misogynistic in it. He's pretty sexist. He's pretty everything, in terms of. But he's also a gangster. So it's like he's not painting him out to be a good guy. Nope. But then there is a scene where he sort of does grope her.
Yes.
And it's a bit... I think what's more problematic about that scene is that if you read around it, she didn't know that was going to happen.
Oh, really?
So what he did to her was... It was not consensual, basically.
That's not cool.
For anyone who's ever done any acting, if something calls for something, whatever it is in the script... There will always be a discussion between directors and actors of how do you want to play this. There has been times when, like, obviously, we've joked before, I've done a drama degree where there's cause for someone to get slapped. Mm-hmm. And you just go as the actor, on the night, just hit me. Mm-hmm. Like, just actually do, and you shouldn't do that. I should go on the record and say I'm not like a Daniel Day-Lewis type. But there are people who will just go, just do it then. Mm-hmm. And there are, there's loads of stories throughout cinematic history of, so-and-so did this to get a genuine reaction. Mm. And I'm always like, okay, I appreciate it. On one hand, I appreciate it. On the other hand, where's the line? Mm-hmm. And I think to grab a woman's breast, non-consensually to get an authentic reaction is probably crossing the line.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you feel about that now? I've told you the context. How do you feel about that?
That does suck because she wouldn't have been. It's just not cool that she wasn't expecting it. Like if they had a conversation beforehand and she went, yeah, okay, that's fine, then whatever. But that you cannot predict how she's going to feel about that afterwards. And if she feels shit about that afterwards, that's your fault, and you shouldn't have put her in that position.
You basically
that is a real shame. Yeah.
Like if she's uncomfortable. Sucks. So that scene, and again, I know in the context, it's like, well, he's a bad guy, so he's doing a bad thing. But when you read around it, it's like, I don't really agree with that, suffer for your art sort of bullshit. Just act it. Mm. There's other ways you can make her feel uncomfortable, without doing that. So that was, the general treatment around, there's a lot of like, told you what had happened if we had a broad on a team. I told you what had happened if we had,
Yeah.
There's a lot of just telling her how fit she is and telling her how beautiful she is and stuff like that, and again, I know these are not good guys. Even Jake is a criminal who's the lead. Mm-hmm. But even then, he says to her at one point, Summit, just because we fuck once doesn't mean you get to tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, it's just a bit misogynistic. Well, it's very misogynistic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue. And I completely, it's not that it had gone over my head, but I suppose I haven't watched this it must be coming up to 10 years since the last time I watched this. So I just, maybe I didn't notice it for whatever reason. So that was something. Yes, okay, an extension of that, Dustin Hoffman's characters inappropriate, yes, and they are inappropriate. I did think it fell down a little bit an hour in. I thought it became a little bit bogged down with its own plot and a little bit bogged down with telling you its own plot, and then also sort of trying to get back to going, look how clever this is, look how clever our characters are. So there's a little bit like that. I know I said there's a good balance between exposition dumping, but there's at least one bit right at the beginning where Paul Giamatti just exposition dumps the whole setup for the film. So after their friend is killed, they then go away and meet up again at a cafe. And that's when Paul Giamatti goes, this is who killed him, and this is why, and this is what he told him, and this is and that's how you were introduced to Dustin Hoffman's character, because once he has told them all that, they then go and meet him, and that's when they're trying to do the grift and all that. So there is a little bit of like, I'd never noticed that before. I'd never noticed how much it literally just went, here is the setup for the film, in a whole bit of dialogue. And then the other thing I just want to finish on, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Clocks does not fit at the end whatsoever.
Completely agree. It was so weird. It was so weird. As it finished, wasn't it? It was so weird.
As it finished, Abby walked in and she went, how was it watching it again? And I went, yeah, some good, some bad. And then went, this bullshit though. Like, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the whole aesthetic of the film. Like, all cool guys. Not that, I don't mind Coldplay. I think they've got some good songs, but it just doesn't fit. It is your proper quintessential example of, well, that's in the charts at the moment, so if we get it in the film, it might get the film watched.
It doesn't make any sense. And the rest of the film, it's a score. It is a score
There's
that has
no
been
other
written
music, is there?
by a composer.
There's no other songs. It's just,
not a soundtrack. And then just before the credits, I was like, huh? What the hell? But no, it is weird and it's jarring and it doesn't match. And I thought that is such a bizarre choice.
That's what had gone wrong with my telly.
Yeah. It's like, oh shit, I'm picking up the radio somehow.
And it goes on for ages.
The whole time, they play the whole thing.
To the point where it goes through the credits, and my other half went, "Oh wow, they've committed to playing the whole song." I was like, "Yeah. Oh, they paid Coldplay for the song, using the song."
So weird.
I paid for the song. Weird. I'm getting the song. Okay,
using it.
Well, anyway, that's about it for me. So, what do you think about? Do you agree with my points? Was there anything else you didn't like? What do you reckon?
Yeah, certainly agree with most of what you said there. For me, in general, the film just didn't have a huge impact on me. And there are a lot of different good factors about the film, some of which obviously I've just described. But as a whole, it just didn't make me feel a great deal. I didn't feel hugely engaged, and I wasn't really too bothered about how things turned out one way or the other. And I am finding it a bit difficult to fully analyse why that is. But I think that one of the contributing factors is that I didn't really think much of Edward Burns. So He turns up, he does the job, he looks like Ben Affleck, and he's wearing a suit, right? So that all works, and that's fine. But there's nothing to his character. There is no je ne sais quoi. I loathe to say, but I feel like that's the thing.
So you think does he lack charisma, do you think?
There is something missing. I feel like he has turned up and he's read the lines, and that's kind of it.
And a bit like, and again, neither of these people are going to listen to this podcast, but I'd never, this is just opinion. I'm a bit like that with Sam Worthington.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I'm a bit like,
I get what you mean.
He's just, or again, you're probably not going to listen to it, Orlando Bloom. I'm like, there's something where I'm like,
Orlando Bloom is the best elf ever, and it works, right? But
anything
away
else
from that, it's like, no, you can't just be Legolas in everything. That doesn't work with everything. I totally get you.
It's the cinematic equivalent of someone going like, do you like Lana Del Rey? And I'm like, yeah,
sure.
I suppose, yeah.
It's all right, have that one good one.
Yeah,
and then,
if I'm eating. Yeah. And if I need something on in the background.
Yeah.
Then it won't be that. I'd much rather listen to Otis Redding or Sam Cooke. But anyway.
He didn't command the screen for me. I feel like he didn't do any extracurricular into his character. He didn't want to figure out his character's motivations, that sort of thing. There just isn't really much else there.
Edward.
It was, and the thing is, his performance was fine. He can act.
He's not crap.
It's not crap, definitely not. And he delivered in some respects. But when you've got him alongside someone like Dustin Hoffman, who, in my opinion, has dug a little deeper, has looked for a little something that makes this guy who he is, and this is why he's acting this way. Yeah, and that it just was missing with our leading man. So I just felt detached, I think.
He's a little bit upstaged by other characters, isn't he? He's a little bit upstaged. He's definitely upstaged by Dustin Hoffman. He's probably upstaged by Paul Giamatti. And although she isn't given loads to do, I'd probably argue that Rachel Weisz is a stronger screen presence than him. And a lot of that's due to the way, obviously, when she is framed, she takes up the whole screen because they're very much like they've made the femme fatale character sort of thing. And even though they don't give her loads to do, she still upstages him in those scenes because she just commands your attention, doesn't she, when she's on the screen so well.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that is mainly it, really. I just didn't feel the thing. I didn't feel the thing that I want to feel when I'm watching a film. And it's not that I don't like films of this genre. There was just something or a few things there missing for me. The only thing I can truly pinpoint is Edward Burns, which is a shame. And I wish I could dig deeper into this.
Sometimes you have those films where you go, especially when you're doing this, I like it. You know, there's things I like, there's things I don't, but I am in no rush to watch it again. There's definitely films that both of us have picked. I've even, ones of my own that I've picked or ones that you've picked. I've been like, yeah, I've got stuff to say, but nah. And that's it's definitely it's there to do a job, isn't it? It's there to entertain you and be fluffy and be cool and sleek and sexy. It does do that. But it probably doesn't leave a lasting memory. It might have done for me a little bit more because I watched it at a little bit more of an impressionable age when I was probably about 14, you're all about the cool, sexy con men films. But now it's definitely the sort of film, if you put it on, you turn to your other half or whoever you watched it with as it finished and went, yeah, it's fine. But what was the lead guy's name? Jake, Frank,
Julie,
Bob,
Julian,
Mike. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
But anything else?
No, that was it for me.
Okay, then. So let's move on to talk about the critical reception then. So then we can talk about the critical reception and the box office and decide, is it underrated? Is it underseen? Is it neither? Alice, I presume you haven't seen the box office or the critical reception. How do we think it did?
So you've picked it because you thought it was underrated. So you're kind of aware of its flaws, but you do quite like it at the same time. How do I think it did? I reckon. What do I think the critics thought? Oh, I don't know. This is a hard one actually, because technically there's quite a lot of good things about it. Yeah. It's just as a whole, it just doesn't quite deliver for me personally. I'd probably give it like a high 5, like maybe like a 5.7. And
confidence.
What? What'd you say?
Confidence. I'm very tired. We did it. So you give it a high 5.
We did it. We won the podcast.
We did it. We made the worst pun that anyone's ever made.
I think, yeah, so I'd probably give it about 5.7. Do I think it got that? Maybe like around that. I'd maybe go just a tiny bit lower.
Oh, God.
And maybe say it got just like a 5.5, just a tiny bit lower. I reckon it got 5.5 overall. Okay. That's kind of what I'm sitting on.
So at the time of recording over on IMDb, it gets 6.6 out of 10.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
The audience on Rotten Tomatoes give it 70%.
What?
And the critics on Rotten Tomatoes give it 69%. So they're all in the same region.
Oh, shit.
And that averages out 68%.
Right. I'm missing something.
I think for me,
something.
So this is why I said at the beginning, I'm not sure it is underrated. I'd say for me, that is about right. It's it's fine. It's 68, just under a 7. I know for you that's probably overrated, is it?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll put that out to the guys. Because I'm not even saying it's underrated, to be honest. I'm looking at that like, yeah, it's probably about right. For me, this is probably, it's probably a 7 out of 10. 68 is just under that, but I'll settle for appropriately rated. However, box office wise, it made worldwide $23 million. So that, for me, if you consider the cast, if you consider it was released in the wake of Ocean's 11,
Yeah.
You got Rachel Weisz in there. You got Dustin Hoffman. So Rachel Weisz, this is around the time that the Mummy films were really big.
Right.
Dustin Hoffman's obviously Dustin Hoffman's Dustin Hoffman. Edward Burns was I don't think he's ever been a massive name. He's known mainly for Saving Private Ryan, but he's in this as well, and there's other elements as well. So I would say that is underseen when you consider who is in it. What would you say to that?
Yes, and it says here that the budget was 15 mil, so that's what, only 10 million. Oh, not even 23 mil. You said so 8 mil over its budget. So that's not loads,
and it's not accounting for marketing as well, which is usually double the budget.
Yeah.
So I would say it's appropriately rated and underseen, and I'm guessing you're saying it's overrated, underseen.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. It's probably underseen because probably not many people have watched it with that sort of box office. Do I think people should watch it? Maybe if you're into this sort of thing, and if you like Edward Burns, maybe you're a big Edward Burns
fans
fan
out there.
Yeah,
the big old.
Maybe this is for you. But yeah, I'd go on. A little bit underseen, probably not underrated for me though. Probably a bit overrated.
We'll put it to you guys out there. Okay then, so confidence. We'll put it to the guys out there, but we're going possibly. We're saying underseen, and then the rating. That's down to you guys at home. Alice, it's your turn to pick next week.
Sure is.
What are we watching? What are you following confidence with?
Well, I'm confident that this one is going to impress you.
Okay.
I think I'm on to a winner here. So next week we're going to be analysing Fantastic Four, the one from 2005.
The Jessica Alba, Ewan Griffith one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, well, in that case, join us for next week where we'll be talking about the Fantastic Four, just Fantastic Four from 2005. You know, the one with Captain America in it, before he's Captain America.
Yes, exactly that.
And amongst other people. So yes, tune in next week when we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter/X, whatever it's called now, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you'll find us. Go over there, give us a follow. We're always putting content out there as well as links to our regular episodes. We're also on the television as well, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday evening from 6 p.m, you can find me and Josh talking about all our favourite underrated and underseen films on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the north east of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. Or if you're outside the UK or not in one of those regions, you can check us out on Daily Motion. So if you go on over there and type in Just Films and That, you'll be able to see exactly what it is that we're up to. But yes, we're on your telly every Friday evening from 6 p.m.
Yes, lots of ways to see us, hear us, engage with us, get in touch with us. We will see you next week when we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four. Very excited. It's goodbye from me. Thank you for listening. Cheerio.
Bye.